And I've been racking my brain trying to think of.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the House Education Instruction Full Committee meeting. This is Tuesday, March the 28th, and we are happy you have joined us, whether in person or live streaming. And so we will start with, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Representatives Sapicki, Chisholm, Cochran, Darby, Dixie, Glenn, Hakeem, Hicks, Johnson, Leatherwood, McCalman, Reagan, Todd, Warner, White, Vice Chairman Raper, Chair Lady Moody. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so very much. And today I just took the privilege to ask our Vice Chair. We're going to kind of take things out of order. Vice Chair Raper, will you begin this meeting with prayer?
I'll be glad to. 2 or 3 comments, and I'm going to read a scripture, but a couple of comments. First of all, in lieu of yesterday, in my viewpoint, there is no explanation other than just say that's just evil. I have no other explanation on something like that. Many of us have questions. We have concerns. We are saddened. We angry. Just numbers and numbers of things. And I have a scripture here that I want to read to you, and it's from Nahum 1:3, and it says, "The Lord is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. The Lord hath his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet." And I want to say that the good Lord is still in power, and there will be glory that comes from this. So, and one other thing before I pray is, remember we have Chairman Hawk, one of our representatives. His father passed away over the weekend, so keep him in mind as we do the prayer. May we pray. Lord, we don't understand this, and it's not for us to understand anyway. It's in your hands, and Lord, we just ask for comfort and peace upon not only this town, this school, but we have numbers of families that are involved in this tragedy. And Lord, just bless them and comfort them and show yourself in a real way. And Lord, it's getting close to time that we rejoice because we have a risen Savior in Easter. And may we celebrate Easter year round because we always have a risen Savior. Lord, one last thing is we pray for Chairman Hawk's family, and please bless him and his family, and help comfort them and through this time of trouble. Lord, we ask all in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And now, as we usually do, we'll do the pledge. If you'd like to join us, please do. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Members, are there any personal orders? All right. Seeing none, I just want to remind, especially for those who are live streaming us, we're in a time period in our legislative year session where members will be going in and out. They're not being rude. They are going to other committees to present bills. And so if you see a lot of movement going on, most of the time they are able to come back and finish out with us. But that's we're in a busy time of year, and it's exciting, and hopefully we've done really good things. I think we have. So with that, I will, first of all, members, today we have with us Excel and Ed and the Department of Education that will make a presentation for us on our math standards. We're looking forward to what's coming up next in that calendar of standards that will be looked at again. So today, first, we will hear from the Department of Education, and we have Dr. Eve Carney and Dr. Christy Wall with us. If y'all would like to come up and sit at that table. Thank you all for being here today. And just for the record, when you get your microphone on, if you will, restate your name and who you're with. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Is that better? Eve Carney, Deputy Commissioner at the department.
Christy Wall, Assistant Commissioner of Academics, Tennessee Department of Education.
We sure do appreciate y'all being here, so I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Chair Lady Moody, for the invitation and the opportunity to provide the committee an overview of and information on the current math supports offered to Tennessee students. The department continues to move forward with a number of initiatives, resources, and professional learning opportunities in math, several of which were informed by what we have learned from our early grades literacy work. While we continue to keep our foot on the gas in literacy, we know that in order for students to be prepared for learning and life, we must also support students in recovery and acceleration in math. Over the last 10 to 15 years, the department has launched a number of initiatives for Tennessee students. We had initiatives that leaned in just on standards. We had initiatives that just leaned in on instruction or instructional materials. What we never accomplished, frankly, until our early literacy work was really a comprehensive model, a 360 view that encompassed all of the key components. Number one, standards. Number two, high-quality instructional materials. And then number three, the ongoing support needed to implement with fidelity. And trying to carve out one and trying to solve for one problem without taking into account all of those key components, we've not been as successful as we would want to be. And based on the successes that we have seen in our early literacy work, we believe this comprehensive or 360 approach is appropriate and right for math as well. We've used the analogy related to literacy of a three-legged stool and the need to have all three for balance and for them to be functional. The revision and modernization of Tennessee's math standards set an excellent foundation as math becomes an area of increased emphasis and support. These new standards, aligned with high-quality instructional materials and the ongoing supports for teachers and students, all must be a part of our approach going forward. Dr. Christy Wall will provide an overview of the current state of math instruction, followed by information on the things that are already underway for the committee. Afterwards, we're happy to take any questions and look forward to the presentation by Excel and Ed as well, and hope between the two, you all will have kind of a sense of where we are, what we're currently doing, and some of the other pieces that we look forward to intervening. Again, appreciate this committee bringing heightened interest to this topic and the opportunity to share this information and the engagement that we know will follow. Dr. Wall?
Thank you, Dr. Carney. Good morning. Thank you, committee, for having us. As Dr. Carney had mentioned in the introduction, we'll go through the current state of math instruction, comprehensively representing the state of Tennessee's movements and some data points in terms of where we're at and anticipation of where we're going. In addition to that, we will go into a couple of sections that are dealing with standard settings and then implementation support to districts, as well as anticipatory needs for sustainability to see the shifts that we anticipate and the outcomes that we need in the realm of mathematics. So for the current state of math instruction, Tennessee has completed a revision to its mathematics standards. As of February 2022, the standards will be implemented for the first time in the fall of 2023 and assessed through TCAP for the first time in the spring of 2024, so a year from this spring. High school math standards are undergoing the most significant revisions. New math standards for statistics are being introduced for the first time in several grade level spaces, going as far down to 6th grade, spanning through the 12th grade. Math TCAP assessments will go through a standard setting process to produce criterion reference scoring expectations in the summer of 2024, of which this work will be conducted by Tennessee educator panels and facilitated through our assessment team. In the 21-22 school year, Tennessee's recovery from COVID academic learning loss has been slower in math than in ELA. Research across the country indicates that this pattern is, in fact, consistent. Since 2017, Tennessee's performance on the 4th grade math NAEP assessment has tracked closely to the national average. The 2022 post-COVID NAEP results have compared similarly to national rankings. Note, only 36% of the sample of Tennessee students completing the NAEP assessment scored proficient or above. Similarly, only 36% of elementary students completing the spring 2022 math TCAP assessment scored proficient or advanced. Very similar results in both testing sources. 2022 TCAP results also showed a decline in math performance as a result of the pandemic. Elementary saw a 37% of students met or exceeded expectations. Middle school, 33% met or exceeded expectations. And high school, 22% of students met or exceeded expectations. These results showed improvement, but the results did not rebound as quickly as literacy scores have shown. Moving into our area for ongoing improvement and district sustainability and support. We'll talk about this in 3 different categories. So math standard implementation support in service to our districts. The department has offered a series of regional convenings in which we engage with districts over the 2022-2023 academic year. Each of these convenings are held in a series where they're held across the state in 5 different locations. We've had over 130 districts participate, and these convenings are focused on preparing districts for the implementation of their high-quality instructional materials. Convening number 1, which was back in the early fall of 2022, focused on district understanding of the math standards implementation and those instructional shifts. Convening number 2, which was held in November of this past year, focused on district planning for material implementation and principal monitoring for instruction. Convening number 3 focused on district planning and teacher supports. These implementation supports are mirrored and were designed and planned very similarly to the literacy support networks and implementation that we've seen success from as we learn those lessons in the literacy work. Key takeaways from participants who have been engaged in these convenings and district partnership opportunities have stated all of this work is in service to student outcomes. I appreciate time to collaborate within our own district, and we feel much better prepared to launch the implementation of Math HQIM this fall as a result of these convenings and learning opportunities. As we look into the next area, the math implementation networks, these were very much so modeled in service to the focus of math, but also using lessons learned from the literacy work and the implementation supports that were provided to districts as they were onboarding new literacy materials. With the math implementation work, again, very similar to the literacy implementation works, these networks support school districts and school leaders in developing structures and tools and sustainability to ensure that there's improvement in instruction and the use of materials. These are grant-funded opportunities, 2-year grants that districts can opt into and participate in. 110 of our districts have been awarded these funds. Currently, these networks are funded through ESSER dollars, and we would like to request that they continue on simply given the level of engagement and the positive outcomes that we're seeing through our district support as a part of this network structure and learning from one another. There's also some layers of continued support after the adoption of new math materials for our districts, and that includes middle school math training, continuation of high dosage, low ratio math tutoring, learning acceleration supports, and our high school math task force. So to just briefly touch on the middle school math training, this is anticipated to launch in the fall of '23, really targeting conceptual math training for our middle school math teachers. This is designed and planned for 3 days of online learning for math conceptual training and 2 days of in-person learning. Again, very curtailed and specific to our middle grades math teachers. High dosage, low ratio math tutoring to support struggling students is designed through our Tennessee All-Core tutoring model. 87 of our districts are engaged in this work. Approximately 25,000 of our Tennessee All-Core students are currently enrolled in math tutoring, which we're really pleased to see those numbers. All districts have access to free online tutoring and student acceleration programs through the vendor Zern. Zern provides online math lessons for the high dosage, low ratio math tutoring. It provides students with extra practice, progress monitoring, as well as daily lessons and warm-up and video tutorials to provide to tutors. Zern also provides comprehensive reporting that allows the tutors within the program to easily share individualized student progress with teachers and supporting collaboration to accelerate students' learning. Additional learning acceleration supports. Our core regional support offices have provided 2 years of math learning acceleration to district teams. Again, supporting the districts through identifying ways to accelerate math instruction in hopes of seeing higher student outcomes. Core math consultants across our state, there are 8 offices, 1 in each region, 1 math consultant per region. They're deeply supporting 76 of our districts to prepare for successful materials implementation of the new math standards. The core consultants also support district leaders to use classroom observations in support of improved daily instruction. In addition, they're supporting district leaders in creating long-term plans for strong math materials, including unit and lesson preparation that ensures access points for all students. The final element that we'd like to bring to this committee, just for update and understanding, is that there is a high school math task force that's been developed. The purpose of this high school math task force is to shape and develop math pathways that meet both innovative math pathways and innovative school models. This high school math task force has launched as of this month, March of 2023, and is comprised of directors of schools, THEC, State Board, and different TCAT organizations across the state. The committee will identify current barriers and work to develop possible solutions and make recommendations around the need for potential policy revisions that will enable school districts to improve innovative math pathways alongside their innovative schools model. In addition, the task force will develop models to implement for math pathways and recommendations.
So as she walks through some of the key things that are already underway, again, we go back to those 3 pieces. We've already revised the standards. We are in the process of supporting districts in the use and implementation of high-quality instructional materials. The big piece that is the ongoing component is just that ongoing support that happens through our core offices, through other grants and other opportunities as we kind of think through and implement this kind of emphasis on math as we have in English or in reading. So with that, happy to take any questions the committee may have or clarify any points that Dr. Wall walked through with you.
Thank you very much for that. We'll start our list of folks that want to ask questions. Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good presentation there. I noticed you presented the positive side of statistics. What percentage was it? 22% performing on grade level, and what category was that?
That was representing high school mathematics.
So 78% are not.
That's
correct?
That is correct.
That's a very dismal figure. Speaking of figures, though, have you done any analysis on urban versus rural performance in math? Urban schools districts versus rural school districts?
I can say that we have, our data teams have looked at data across student groups as well as individual groups, and there was one other division that they've already done. I don't know that I've seen urban versus rural, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been run. It's one that is not, that I'm not familiar with this morning.
Madam Chair, may I continue?
Yes, you're recognized.
I would remind you that this state underwent a lawsuit that generated the creation of the BEP for urban versus rural differences.
Yes.
And I think that should be something we pay attention to. Has your analysis done any concentration on demographic differences?
Yes.
And what I missed out on what percentages those were and what the impact was.
I'm happy to provide that to the committee. I did not bring that today. I can pull it up on my laptop if you would like.
I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Some other questions I have for you. Teacher sources. Have you done any analysis on the performance of students by the source of the teacher, the EPP, Education Preparation Provider?
That data, again, was something that would be collected at the department in some of our EPP work. I don't have that data with me today.
I would request that. Additionally, I would also like to know, have you done any analysis on the various school districts based on expenditure per pupil and the performance, student performance in the math assessments we're doing here?
So one of the things that we know is coming with our report card is the requirement for that per pupil expenditure reporting. This is part of that data transparency that is part of the federal requirements for report cards. I know it's something that will be rolled out with our report card, and that type of data disaggregation would be part of that.
Well, specifically, I'm interested in that relationship with our new TISA funding formula. Specifically, since we have now got a student-based formula, which
Correct.
is what TISA or TISA, whatever you call it, is, it's critical that we know the impact. Some previous work that I have seen indicates that expenditure per pupil is not what people think it is in terms of its impact. So it's a very important issue that we address. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I do think that will change the way we talk about performance and how we talk about district spending. So I think it's going to be a positive step as we move in that direction for more transparency, to your point, on the spending.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you don't mind any of that material, would you
Sure.
please send all the committee members?
Yes, I'm taking notes as we go.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list is Representative Sapicki, Chairman Sapicki.
Thank you, and I'm going to kind of go down the similar list. First of all, as a qualifier, how long have you each been with the department?
I've been with the department next month will be 14 years.
Thank you.
I've been with the department for the last 6 months.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
You're recognized.
You know, one of the questions that we keep asking here, and my colleague from the Oak Ridge area, it seems like we said 22% of our kids are on grade level in high school in mathematics. And it seems you just glossed over that. Like 78% of our kids are not. And you never offered a reason why you're concerned of why 78% of our kids are not on grade level math. I would like to know from the department, is this a concern of the Department of Education that 78% of our kids are not on grade level in math? Is it a concern of the department that in middle school the number's about the same? Is it a concern of the department that in elementary school the numbers are about the same? It seems we continually come in here and we get glossed over numbers that, well, 22% of our kids are on grade level in high school and 30-something. What in the world is the problem? And tell us the problem so we can fix it, if there's need to be fixed at the state level. We have educators sitting all over the state. You made a reference that the high school math task force. Why weren't teachers included in that task force? The people that have to teach the stuff every day, why weren't they included in that? It's like we're in search of a solution, but we don't want to ask the right people how to solve the problem. I'd love to hear some responses on that.
What I will say is that I can assure you that 22% is not acceptable for me. It is not acceptable for the commissioner or any of us. I can tell you that we are working very, very hard as we have tried to double down on literacy and get that ball rolling. We now stand to do the same for mathematics. Again, our hope is that we have learned some lessons about what has been effective and stop doing the things that aren't effective. That is our goal. That is why we come to work every day. And I can assure you it's not acceptable to anyone at the department that this is where we are. I think your comment about the task force is the right question in terms of there having multiple voices in the room. I am not, I can check into that task force, but certainly feel like having been a teacher and knowing how hard it is, especially facing what teachers are facing today, we certainly, their voice is so valuable in this conversation and agree that they should be part of that.
You recognize, Chairman.
So we've just got done, over the last couple of years, we passed the literacy bill, we passed the learning loss bill, we have the third grade retention bill, we have this laser focus on reading
Yes.
in K through 4. Laser focus, right? And I think we all agree that's the right place to start. Do we have the exact same things for mathematics right now? Do we have, is the state saying, like, I remember when we shifted to phonics, and there was this relief across the state with the teachers that we're going back to something that was tried and true, we know works, right? But we also paid the teachers across the state to be trained in phonics. Is the department coming back with something like the literacy bill for mathematics, the learning loss bill for mathematics, the retention bill for mathematics, so that we can sync up these two programs that we're attacking our two shortcomings in education, especially in K through 4, that have to deal with mathematics and English language arts and reading? Is that coming next year?
My understanding is that those are the conversations that we are having right now. Obviously, we, to your point, we have been laser focused on getting the literacy intervention moving and practice and in process for school districts. And now we are shifting our focus to do what we just described, making sure that we're not trying to remedy one component, but really looking at it comprehensively so that we are giving them what they need to be successful. And I can assure you that any movement we have going forward will include all of those components. And those are ongoing conversations that we are having at the department.
Last one.
Yes, you're recognized.
I believe we've reached a point in education in Tennessee that we cannot keep going down the same pathway.
Understood.
Now, this is something that somebody said to me, and it really got me peaked here. Tennessee has been under education reform, and Chairman White's been here a long time. We've been under education reform for at least a decade. And our scores continue to flounder. We had a great turnaround, and then it kind of stagnated. And my thought is this. Education has become big money to the support of education. Not education, but to the support of it. To the point of, if Tennessee is in a constant perpetual state of reform, new programs, new textbooks, new curriculums, new this, new that, and we keep trying stuff over and over and over because that leads to big money. If Tennessee would fix it and become the best educational system in the country, all of those new would all go away because we'd be laser focused on what's working. And the cost of education would drop in the ancillary ways, which therefore we could turn that money around and put it to work for higher pay for teachers to drive more people into the teaching profession. We have to get to a point in education, this is where the department comes in, and we come in. We have got to get to the point that we are out of the education reform business because we do it the best. And then we can focus the excess money that we're spending on all this reform stuff all the time and re-laser focus it back in education. If I had my say, it'd be on teachers' assistants and more training and more help in K through 3 on the front end. How do we get out of the perpetual cycle of education reform, of changing stuff every couple years? We got a new governor coming, trust me, by law, we have a new governor coming in 4 years. Do you think there's not going to be more education reform with a new governor? Some of you have been here a while on new governors. It's new education reform every time we get a new governor. When are we going to fix it and get away from it so we don't have to do education reform anymore? How can the department facilitate this, that we are on the right path to get these kids educated? Because here's my long speech to it close. I've been here 5 years. 5 years. There are kids in our educational system now, since I've been here for 5 years. Is their educational outcome getting any better? And the statistics are telling me right now, no. There are kids graduating right now, and teachers are in here, they know this. We got kids graduating high school that the diploma they're given is not worth the piece of paper it's printed on. They're 2, 3, 4, 5 grade levels behind. I just want to fix this, folks, for our kids. I just want to fix it for our kids. How can you guys help us? That was a short question.
I would say the way, from where I sit and what I see is we do this by figuring out, and right now we are making gains in literacy. And we take those lessons and we apply them and not try to reinvent the wheel for mathematics, for example. We take what's working. And when that is what to me is the sustainable part of this, is when we begin to see outcomes. And we were moving in that direction before the pandemic. And of course, we've seen recovery, but now more than ever, it matters. It matters to get this right for kids who are now trying to catch up and trying to make sure that, to your comment, that we are preparing them to be citizens, to prepare them for life. And that is our goal. And I would say that the best way to get to that place is to continue to do what's working and just focus on doing those things very well.
Thank you very much. Next on the list, we have Representative Hakeem.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And ladies, thank you for being here. If I am permitted, Madam Chair, I think I have 2.5 questions.
All right.
All right. First one, I concur with my colleague, Representative Sapicki, Chairman Sapicki, in regards to teachers. In the process, do we have, what do we call the groups? Task force, where we hear from teachers to gain insight or knowledge from them? Do we have anything like that when it comes to math?
I'll start, and I know Christy has some as well. Obviously, when we have a standards revision, Tennessee teachers are involved in that process, as well as in the setting of cut scores, et cetera. So teachers are all of the standards work is driven by Tennessee teachers. For sure. And I know that Christy and some of her work in academics can speak to a couple of the others. I know there are teacher panels and other advisory groups more broadly at the department. But Christy, you want to share a couple of the ones you all work with?
Yes. And I think that that's a great call out in terms of the level of engagement of teachers. They are one of the most important catalysts in making this work come to life and in the classrooms across our state. There are some engagement opportunities, advisory type panels. However, moving into the math adoption and new standards space, we've been a little precursor to letting the literacy sit and kind of take shape, and then request a lot of engagement, feedback, classroom visits, things like that. And so we will be getting to a point where teachers are very explicitly called on and talked to and conferenced with, just to solicit the feedback, because they're the closest to the work, and provide the most transparent information in terms of what they're seeing in their classrooms and how we can further design support to ensure that they're getting the student outcomes that they are hoping to achieve.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if we talk with a group of teachers who participated in advisory committees or whatever, is there any chance that they would tell us that the concepts, the ideas that we put forward have been incorporated in the process, how it's being developed? Or would they tell us that they took what we had to say and did what they wanted to do? In other words, do we implement or take their advice seriously?
I can tell you that I value, as a former teacher, they're on the front lines. They're doing the hard work in classrooms every day. We absolutely would take a teacher's recommendation to heart and consider how best to incorporate feedback. Clearly, in a state where you're engaging a number of stakeholders, it's likely that not everyone is going to see their feedback explicitly, but I can assure you it happens in our discussion. Anytime we post something for feedback at the department, we track it, we review it, and we have discussions about how best to address or incorporate that feedback.
Okay, one last.
Yes, you're recognized.
when we talk about standards, are our standards, what TISA and math standards and so forth, are we in line? Are they in line together? In addition to that, do we look at or consider what's considered best practices, some things that have worked throughout the nation? Do we consider anything like that?
Well, certainly what we want most for our students are to be competitive in the job market, in their career and life. And so we absolutely look at practices in other states and what standards are needed for the jobs, not just of today, but of tomorrow and the careers as such. I think that addition of statistics is an example of how we've made some adjustments in that space to meet the demand. I know even within Tennessee, we're talking more about how high school needs to look different to prepare students for pathways after high school. So certainly we are looking not just nationally, but within our own state as to what the demands are, but we absolutely are trying to prepare our students to be competitive, whether they live in Tennessee or whether they live elsewhere in this nation.
All right, and I would close, Madam Chair,
Yes.
by saying that comments made by Chairman Sapicki, I concur with it. It may not be anything we can put in a bill, but I think we're all tired of the repetition of going through this process year after year and not getting the results that we're looking for. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Next, we have Vice Chairman Raper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, ladies, for your presentation. One question I had, and I'm a former teacher, and I've been thinking, is there any thought process to cross-curricular alignment? For example, let's say that when we're doing our hour and a half of ELA in the mornings and whatever topic that we may be reading and discussing then, that we utilize the same concepts the very next hour and a half when we're doing mathematics and having similar topics instead of one time we're talking about a story here and it doesn't pertain at all to our next mathematics lesson. So had there been any thought about alignment of curriculum and cross-curricular alignment?
You want to take that?
So that's an interesting comment, and I've definitely made note of that. In terms of cross-curricular opportunities, oftentimes we rely on teachers and grade levels and districts to provide instructional guidance in terms of where to make those natural, coherent connections from literacy to math, from science to technology. You can see naturally across several of our STEM schools the natural integration of science and technology, engineering and mathematics, and how they all fit together. But in terms of from the department's level and perspective, it's hard to really notion one way or the other to call out those needs for cross-curricular connections, but I understand the point that you're making and the coherence that makes in classrooms.
May I follow up?
Yes, you're recognized.
And you'd mentioned it's a little more of classroom choice, and I understand that, and it's good that teachers do have that choice. But if we have a little more guidance that just gives them the guidelines to look at cross-curricular alignment, and it is basically online on whatever topic that we're doing day by day, I think teachers will be more prone to doing something like that rather than you have a list of standards in mathematics, you have a list of standards in ELA, and obviously they're not going to match up. They're just going to tackle one when they get to it and another when they get to it. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Representative Dixie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you giving me this time to speak. I think that everyone here on this committee, we are committed to having a better educational experience for our children. I know we're not supposed to call names, but it's just easier for me to do this. Representative Sapicki and I, we've been on this committee since we've been here, and we've always talked about how we can make it better. We may have disagree on how we get there, but if at the end of the day, we have the child in mind. And 90% of the time, we agree. And one thing we talked about that I think that we can do is we can cut out the middleman. We need to go straight to the teachers. And we had talked about having some town halls across and hear just straight from our teachers. And I think that that's maybe something that's something that we can do immediately, maybe in the fall, start in East, West, Middle Tennessee, maybe 2 in each region. I'm committed to working with you to get that done, and I'm sure that we can do that. And that way we can have some really serious outcomes and measurable things that we can do, that we can implement, because we're hearing it directly from the teachers. And I think that is one way that we can take some of the onus off of the department, and we can just do it ourselves, and then come and say, hey, this is what this is what the boots on the ground, these are the stakeholders saying that this is what we need to do. So if you're amenable to that, and hopefully we can work through the department as well and try to get those set up. And I think that we can really start to get out of that circular rat race of chasing our tails about the education reform. I do appreciate what you do, but I think that we can do some things. It's not saying that you're not doing the best you can, but sometimes you get disconnected the farther we are, just like government. We get disconnected from our constituents the farther government goes up the chain. So we need to get back to touching the people who we impact the most by our legislation. So I think that I would like to just close by, Madam Chair, and I think we have pretty much all the chairs on the major committees in this committee, that we should commit to work and do this in a bipartisan way and set up those town halls and make sure that we travel together and we commit to being there and listening and coming back with some real solutions from teachers and see how we can craft some legislation to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like a road trip. Make your plans here. I think we're willing to travel. Representative Hicks, you're next, and I want to remind the members, we have to be out here at 10:30, and we do have another presentation. So if you have one more question for these presenters and can make it quick, I know there's a couple of people that were wanting to speak, but just keep the time in mind. But please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Lady. Just a quick comment. With 22% of our high school students up to par in math, that's a pretty low bar. The way I see it, if everybody gets on board and works extremely hard, what are you going to get that to? You might get lucky and get it to 40 to 50%. My concern is about the 50% that we don't even, they're not even in the ballpark here. They're not even mentioned. The 50% that's below, that's really, really struggling. Anything that I see that the Department of Ed or that we do here really doesn't touch those students, the ones that I'm concerned about. The reason I see that is, Chairman Sapicki, I graduated probably 4 or 5 grades below my senior year, okay? Struggled all the way through it. Lo and behold, when I got out of high school, once I put a 30-foot measuring tape in my tool belt and a speed square on my side, I started learning math. Didn't take me long to figure things out. A few years after that, this was a long time ago, I was one of the first contractors in our area to buy a computer. I built my own job cost. I built my own accounting program. I built my own estimating program on that computer. I found out through work just exactly how good I was at math. And it was exciting for me. I mean, To get my contractor's license, don't you think I had to learn math? I did not learn any of this in school, okay? So I just wanted to keep an open mind that there's always 40 to 50% of the kids that when we have these meetings, they're sort of left out. We're not giving them a extra option. We're not seeing them through on what they can really do for our state. This is a hard-working state. We was founded on hard work. Not everybody goes to college. And we need to get back to that as a state. And I think you'll see a difference in education if we do that. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much. Now, Vice Chair, you got a quick question, or?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One more real quick question. First of all, I appreciate the comments of many of the reps. Chairman Sapicki, I felt was dead on. Chairman Reagan, his request for information I thought was great. And I would like to add one component, and I'm asking also, Madam Chair, when Chairman Reagan gets that information, if we could share it among our group, I sure would appreciate it. But one more piece of information that I don't know if you can produce or not, but I would like to have, if possible. Do you do grade bands such as 3, 5, and so on? May we have that, please, as far as results? I sure would appreciate that.
Yes, sir, we can do that.
Thank you.
Well, I see no more questions. There may be, but no more time to ask them. But anyway, thank you both for being here, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you and the communication with the information that's been requested. So keep up the good work, and thank you again.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I will send that information to you to disseminate to your committee. I really appreciate the conversation and the heightening of this conversation.
Thank you very much. While the next presenters are coming up, I have a request to recognize someone.
Yes,
Vice Chair?
I know this is a little bit out of order, but we have the Adult Leadership Committee that's from my hometown and also surrounding areas. So thank you for being here yesterday and today, and thank you very much. If you would recognize those, please.
Thank you all for being here. And I know another group came in. Are you guys teachers, I'm assuming, from all over or a certain area? Well, thank you all for being here. We do appreciate you taking your time away and coming up here. Thank you. All right, our next presenters are at the table. I will recognize them. This is Jack Powers and Dr. Christie. You said your name. I don't want to butcher it. Is it Hovantes? I'll let you say it, and I'll correct myself. But you're from Excel in Ed in Action. And please, if you will state your names, and then I'll try to do it honor.
Christy Hovanets.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jack Powers. I'm the Regional Advocacy Director for the Southeast for Excel in Ed. And just to say it one more time, I'm joined by Christy Hovanets. She is a Senior Policy Fellow at Excel in Ed. Thank you, Madam Chair Moody, for inviting us to speak today. We're very excited to give a presentation on math policy. You are going to hear some more about math data, although I realize that you all don't need any more convincing that Tennessee, like many of its southeastern peers, has an issue with math. So we are going to spend a little bit of time today talking about NAEP data as it relates to math, but we're also going to talk a little bit about what some other states and potential solutions could be. I will start and just briefly kind of give you all an overview of Excel in Ed, who we are. We are a 501c3 organization who supports state leaders in transforming education to unlock opportunity and lifelong success for each and every child. And we do that first and foremost by helping states develop and implement innovative policies in a couple different areas that I'll talk about in a moment. We're guided in that work by our board. Former Governor Jeb Bush is our president. He's the chairman of our board. And as you can see, our board is comprised of business and education leaders who, again, guide all of our work. These are the 5 kind of core policy areas that ExcelinEd engages in. The first is spanning the digital divide. One thing I'll call out here when you look at these policies, Tennessee has excelled in a number of these areas that I'm sure you all will recognize. So bridging the digital divide, think about things like ensuring broadband and device access for students, especially underserved students and students in rural areas. Closing learning gaps, 3rd grade literacy, math, which we're talking about today, school and district accountability are all critical elements of closing learning gaps. Empowering families with opportunities, whether that means public school choice through high-performing public charter schools, private school choice, open enrollment policies, things of that nature. College and career pathways, Representative Hicks, thinking about ways that we can ensure that students have multiple different options in high school, making sure that the pathways, the college and career pathways our high schools are offering are aligned to high-demand, high-wage jobs, and that we have really strong data systems to measure and see where kids are going and if they're getting those high-demand, high-wage jobs. And finally, reimagining learning. Think about customized education for every student, things like learning pods, things like programs that allow students to learn at their own pace. And finally, I'll just kind of touch on the 4 kind of critical functions. These are what we offer to states. This is what we do at ExcelinEd. We convene thought leaders in a number of different areas like literacy and college and career pathways. We conduct state-specific research to help states implement these creative solutions. We engage in the development of policy and help states implement that policy. And finally, we are advocates for change where we believe that change is needed. So with that brief overview, I will turn it over to my colleague again. Dr. Christy Hovanec is a senior policy fellow at ExcelinEd. She focuses on accountability as well as a number of different academic areas for us, and I'm really excited for the presentation that we've prepared for you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. In a room of 23 people, there's a 50-50 chance that at least 2 people have the same birthday. So when you think about this, hopefully you're thinking a little critically. Do you think of your birthday and comparing it to 22 other people in the room? Do you have to think about the 22 other people in the room comparing to the 21 other people in the room? It's a critical thinking skill. It's tough to challenge. And with 23 people, a 50-50 chance with 365 days of the year seems a little counterintuitive. But this is what math's about. It's about understanding exponents. It's about critical thinking. It's about numbers and understanding how this works. In this room here, about 50 people in it, 97% chance that somebody shares a birthday. We're looking at different permutations, different pair makings, and different critical thinking skills. And why is this important? It's because our brains have a hard time comprehending sometimes mathematical concepts, but when you sit down and start thinking critically and logically and understanding exponents and the compounding of exponents, it actually gets pretty simple. These skills might not seem important, other than this is just a great random party fact, but this comes into play in personal finance, in health, population growth, in different ways. So understanding math really is a critical and important part of people's lives. So why are we talking about math now? Why is it getting so much hype? I mean, obviously, it's because the National Assessment for Educational Progress came out with results in 2022 and showed that there wasn't a single state in the nation that made improvements in math. And in 8th grade, every single jurisdiction declined in math performance. What was the real impact of that? Average math scores decreased about a half a grade level in 4th grade and nearly a full grade level in 8th grade. This is what we're seeing in math. Those declines also happened nationally in reading, but it was only about 3 points. So we had a much bigger impact with COVID in math discussions. We're talking about the National Assessment for Educational Progress data today instead of TCAP because it provides a longer longitudinal perspective and also apples to apples comparisons across the states. One thing that's important to note is that Tennessee consistently hovers around the national average. Obviously means there's a lot of improvement that can be made and other states are doing better, so we can learn from them and what's happening. You can see that Tennessee in the red numbers, their scale scores are below the national average. The green scores are above the national average. It also shows what rank there are. So there are 22 states that Tennessee performs at the 22nd rank, so 21 states perform better than Tennessee in fourth grade math, and you can look at that by demographic as well. Hovering around the national average is okay, but again, lots of room for improvement, and other states really have figured out what is happening with math. We're looking at scale scores here, and you can see in the 10 years from 2009 to 2019, students did make improvements. They're pretty modest, you know, half a grade level here. Black students, particularly in math, a grade and a half almost improvement over their 2009 peers. Unfortunately, most of it was given back during the COVID years. So we know there's capacity to learn, we know there's capacity for improvement, and we know there's an opportunity that kids actually are making progress. Scale scores don't really mean much, so putting it in the perspective of percent proficient, these are the numbers that devastate me. I've heard a lot from the committee too that these are the ones that are devastating. Looking at the fact that only 8% of low-income students in Tennessee are proficient in mathematics should be extraordinarily alarming. And they gave back a lot of percent proficient during the COVID years. That's why we're talking about math now. What is also probably surprising is we had a huge national math panel report. Y'all just passed a K-4 Literacy Reform Act based off of the National Reading Panel that did its work from 97 to 2000, entirely research-based. Everything in it was comprised of national experts that were able to demonstrate the scientific evidence that teaching reading, using scientifically based reading research, actually made a difference in student outcomes. 8 years after that report was published in 2000, the National Math Panel was convened. The same exact type of experts came together and put together the same exact type of report using evidence-based and research for mathematics and how to best teach mathematics and what type of materials are best for mathematics and how teachers should be prepared to teach mathematics. And it didn't really get a lot of traction because it was released during an administration change. They didn't pour billions of dollars into it like they did with Reading First, and the report just kind of floundered. Reading was the focus and the key, and so we're hoping that more states are going to revisit the National Mathematics Advisory Panel report and really start to focus on what makes a difference in teaching kids how to do mathematics. In reading, we have the reading wars. There's math wars as well. They're not as pronounced, and the solution is a little bit different. In math, we want to make sure that instruction is not just student-centered or inquiry-based and conceptual, nor is it just teacher-based with explicit instruction, procedures, and algorithms. We need to make sure that those two are taught simultaneously and blended together to ensure that there's conceptual and procedural understanding that's happening in the classroom, not one then the other, but simultaneously. And so any suggestions you hear of needs to be inquiry-based or conceptual only, or procedures-based, where you might not learn anything about math because all you're looking at is numbers until you actually have to do an application, shouldn't be addressed. So there was a call to end math wars 15 years ago, but we still discuss and talk about them today. So our recommendations from Excel and Ed really stem from the National Mathematics Panel report. Math success requires a comprehensive strategy. It's not just a single program that you're going to pull up on the computer and do for 30 minutes a day. It's not just providing teachers a little bit extra time to teach math. It's not just having the right materials. It's a very comprehensive strategy, but one that does have to start with instructional materials. We need to make sure that instructional materials are grounded in research and that they really focus on arithmetic. Arithmetic is to math what phonics is to reading, and if students don't have the automaticity and fluency with basic facts of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, they're going to struggle when they try and solve any more complex problems. So we need to make sure that professional development also accompanies the adoption of curriculum materials, that teachers have time to explore the materials, learn about shifts in practices, how to leverage some of those best practices, and how to really utilize and use those materials in their classrooms. There are two really good resources for looking for curriculum on what works. One of them is called Ed Reports. It's an independent organization that reviews curriculum based on its effectiveness in teaching kids how to compute. And then also the What Works Clearinghouse reviews studies of materials and curriculum that help students improve in math strategies. The other big thing is supporting teachers. A lot of times teachers are not fully prepared when they come out of their or pre-service programs, colleges of education, or other preparation programs that might be considered in how to actually teach mathematics. And even if they are, having that ongoing job-embedded professional development is critical for them to improve and perfect their skills. We want to make sure that there's a coach or a resource that's available to continue to provide them updates and guidance on their math instruction. We also want to make sure that programs are actually teaching students based on the National Mathematics Panel recommendations of conceptual and procedural knowledge. It's not just inquiry, it's procedures and arithmetic as well. And then finally, we know not every teacher is good at teaching every subject. A lot of states have shifted, even down in the elementary grades, to departmentalization, where if you do have an effective math teacher based on student outcomes, that maybe she's teaching all of the students in third grade mathematics, and another teacher who's effective at teaching reading is teaching all of those students reading. So considering departmentalization down even in the earlier grades, especially for topics such as reading and math, where you may have a strength, can help reduce the requirements of spending more money on training or retraining and getting teachers, effective teachers in front of all students. We also need to make sure that we're regularly monitoring student progress in math. We do it in other subjects. We need to do it in math. We need to make sure that we're administering screenings, that we know where student deficiencies are, and making sure that parents understand if there is a deficiency in math. We want students to be on track to be able to be successful in higher level math courses, and that starts at the very beginning ages. There are different resources available for math screenings and math progress monitoring tools that are free and available to use on the web. We also have to be sure that we're teaching math on a daily basis, ideally for at least 60 minutes a day. This isn't happening in all schools. It's happening in a lot of schools, but not in all schools. A lot of times if people aren't comfortable teaching mathematics, lessons aren't extended for the full 60 minutes. They're not taught every single day, but making sure we are regularly practicing math is very important. We have to be sure that we're using evidence-based interventions. So What Works Clearinghouse can tell you some of the things that are effective and not effective, and making sure that we have extended learning time for students who are struggling. And extended learning time not just before and after school, but also during the school day where they can get tutoring or individualized instruction. We need to have specific math plans for students who are struggling in math to make sure that they are able to catch up. And then also summer activities. We need to make sure that students who are struggling in math get that practice and modeling over the summer as well, that they're not just leaving school and not addressing or talking about the subjects. And then finally, we need to make it as uncool to say, I'm not a numbers person and I'm not good at math, as it is uncool to say, I'm not good at reading. Math is more than just adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. It's problem solving, it's reasoning, it's good decision making, it's being able to think through problems in a very critical way. So getting rid of that notion that you don't really need math, or math isn't important and it's okay and cool to not be good with numbers, needs to go away. And then finally, family and caregivers need to have some strategies to use with their students at home. Frequently, parents don't know what to do or how to interact with students, but we need to make sure that when you're shopping and there's a discount, you're challenging your child to, it's buy one, get one half off. How much does each item cost? We have X amount of money. This is our budget. What can we do to make dinner? Looking at a recipe, how do you double it or half it? And what do you need? How many people can you feed? And, we tell everybody to read kids 30 minutes a night. Read a math story. Talk about math when you're doing that. play Yahtzee or Monopoly. Just something to get kids familiar with math and continuously talking about math. Not only will it increase their vocabulary, it'll improve their math skills as well. And there are some resources currently available. Khan Academy is a very popular one to help students with math at home, also used in the schools, and then just some strategies to help with summer math loss. So what does high quality math instruction looks like? I've said a lot, it has to be conceptual and procedural understanding, and that they need to be both explicitly taught and together. So what does that mean? It's this. If I'm teaching you about triangles and trying to find the hypotenuse measurements, and I pull this out, instead of just saying a squared plus b squared equals c squared, you understand that we're looking at and talking about a right triangle. And this is side A, and this is side B, and this is side C, and how we're trying to solve for it. So it's using the concepts of understanding what is a triangle, what are we trying to find, what does it look like, having kids touch things, use things, and have those manipulatives is really important. But understanding the concepts and how those things work together needs to happen on a daily basis. And we do need to teach algorithms. There's a lot of people that are, not fans of making sure kids need to add all the time or use a squared plus b squared plus c squared, but let them kind of figure that out on their own. We don't need to reinvent what Archimedes and Pythagoras have done. We need to teach kids and tell them, this is how it is done, this is why we're using it, and this is how it works out in the real world and the importance of that. We need to continuously check if students are understanding the algorithms. We need to model those algorithms, give them step-by-step instructions on how to use those algorithms. And then in the conceptual part, as they're reading word problems, we need to make sure that when they're reading a word problem, they understand, am I combining things together, or am I multiplying things out, or am I grouping and sorting things? So being able to really explain to them what they are trying to do first, and then how to actually do it. And obviously using evidence-based practices is important, and ensuring that we have scaffolding throughout each of those lessons, just as we do with the science of all learning. We need to understand limitations of productive struggle. A lot of times you hear teachers wanting to let kids struggle and try and muddle through and figure it out themselves. Again, we need to give them limited time with productive struggle and make sure we're teaching them explicitly what needs to be done and how those things need to happen. There are procedures in math for a reason. There's recipes and cookbooks for a reason. You're not just inventing things on your own. You're following practices and procedures in order to do the right thing. And then growth mindset's also important, but we can't overestimate it. Just because you think you can learn math doesn't mean you don't have to model and practice it. Math is not an inherent ability. It's something that can be learned as long as there's a lot of modeling and practice in doing those things. Attending to executive function and using timed assessments appropriately. You need to be able to have the automaticity with those regular arithmetic facts in order to be successful later in life. If you're using all of your time trying to multiply 7 times 8 and get lost in what you're trying to figure out for your algebra equation, you've used all your brain power and are frustrated by the time you get to solving the higher level math problem. So automaticity in math is really important, just like fluency is important in reading. So making sure we have those base level foundational skills is critical. So in the end, math really matters. Research study that just came out this fall out of Harvard talks about how it gives you college and career options, increases perspectives for future outcomes, and improves later in life outcomes as well.
Thank you very much for that. You talked fast. A lot of material there. Thank you. On our list, first, I have Chairman Sapicki. All right. Representative Hakeem, you're next.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here. You've turned on a few lights in my mind also about this. Firstly, I saw something that's talked about math wars. Is this a difference of opinion as to what should be taught, or the providers when it comes to books and so forth? There's what everyone doesn't agree on the best way to go about this. I'm trying to understand that.
Yes, you're recognized.
Representative Hakeem, that's a good question. Just like with the reading wars, when we talk about whole language versus phonics-based instruction, whole language is just immersing kids in books and hoping that they'll figure out how to read with minimal or limited interactions with explicit letter sounds fluency or phoneme awareness. The same thing happens with math. Just setting a kid down and saying, tell me what the measurement is for C, and letting them struggle and try and figure it out without telling them that, oh, here's the formula you need to use. That's the difference in the math wars. And what the math wars are saying is you can't do one or the other. It has to be both simultaneously, which is where it is a little bit different than reading. The math wars really are focused on all conceptual versus all procedure, where you pick up a textbook and all you have are formulas and procedures and try to figure out, you know, how in the world would this actually apply in real life situations, or what would it look like conceptually on your own. So they're saying this has to happen both and at the same time.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, you're recognized.
Is it a problem to make math interesting? What I mean by that, you gave an example when it came to birthdays. Our colleague, Representative Hicks, I mean, if in school he had been given, I guess, some math that he could, when I say relate to, it may have been with building, it may have been with something else. What are we missing there? Why aren't we making math interesting to our young people?
You're recognized.
Representative Hakeem, that's a good question. Math is interesting and it's fun, and we just don't talk about it in real life opportunities. So I'll bring home a Tennessee example. So I don't know if you watched, but last weekend you had the National Bassmasters Classic in Knoxville, Tennessee on the Tennessee River. And my friend Jeff Gustafson won, and I was super excited. That is all math. I mean, he had to figure out how much the entry fee was, how much his tackle is, how much money could he make, how far did he have to travel by boat on a river with his 50-horse Lund boat, and make it back in time for the weigh-in. He had to catch fish, figure out how much they weighed, and base 16 no less. I mean, we're talking pounds. We're not using the metric system here like they do in Canada. And figure out how to, you know, maneuver all of these mathematical things in addition to concentrating on fishing. And if he isn't good at processing math, then he's not going to be able to turn his full attention to his trade. And so I think even the Bassmaster Classic, I mean, they talked about weights all the time, and we're sitting on the couch going, okay, how many more pounds does he need? What's the fish average? What's this? And they could have made an opportunity there for a whole bunch of young anglers to say, this is all math. I mean, making sure that a river's flowing current 4 miles an hour this way, and you're traveling 50 miles an hour this way, and you have to go 45 miles an hour. How fast can you get there, and how much time do you need, and when do you have to pull up your power pole in order to get back in time? And so it's just really exciting. We can make it exciting and fun. It's just, I think the limited capacity of teachers having to create their own lessons and to figure out how to make it fun and how to apply it to real life is just a real challenge. And so getting parents and caregivers more involved as well in talking about, you know, here's your allowance. If kids get allowances anymore, let's go to the store, and you have to wait for a sale. So read the ads, figure out when the sale is, how much is this going to cost you? Don't forget you have to pay for tax, and get them to challenge. Or making dinner. I mean, there are so many fun things you can do with math, and I love math. Grew up with teachers, am a teacher. It just, you just have to look for opportunities. I mean, I can make anything into a math lesson if you want.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yes, thank you. Next, we have Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask you some of the same questions I asked the department, but from the perspective of a provider. Plus, I have a couple of different questions. Madam Chair, you want to recognize me for each one, or do you want me to just launch?
Just go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Again, in terms of math, my colleague behind me here mentioned that that's related to an issue of demographics, not just demographics in terms of ethnicities or race, but demographics in terms of student interest as well. So how do you segment that or segregate that to determine effectiveness?
As far as student interest?
And or any other category that is a demographic that you can segregate?
As far as, I guess I'm not exactly clear, is math is math. Being able to teach basic arithmetic is important, and that should look the same for everyone. And how you engage with example-specific scenarios will depend on who's in your class and how you want to adjust that instruction.
Well, let me drive this home with it. I substitute taught math in what we called the alternative school. They put different names on them, the academy or whatever it is. But my students broke into 3 rough categories. About a third of them had missed a step somewhere earlier in their math education and had never been able to catch up. There were a third that were extremely bright, but they entertained themselves by cutting up in class and disrupting everybody else's learning. Then there was another third that I just called the thugs. They weren't interested in being in school. In fact, all my kids were in my class by court order, so they'd all been in trouble. So just using that segmentation there to structure a math lesson that would come home to those 3 groups, and there are many more than 3. What does your organization recommend?
So you would definitely have to do more scaffolding in a case like that. So you would need to start with initial instruction, whatever your lesson was, whether, I don't know, let's just start simple word problem, trying to figure out length and distance. So the first thing would be trying to work with a student and saying, okay, the length of this, how do you figure out A or B? And then move forward. For another student, you might provide a different triangle or example and different values or numbers, bigger numbers, more complex numbers. Instead of a 3, 4, 5 right triangle, you're providing one that's got different lengths of numbers. So making the task more difficult while teaching the same standard is how you would scaffold that. And it's just differentiating within the classroom.
Well, that drives my next question, which the department I was aiming at as well. Student performance. The way you teach math, the way you teach English language arts or whatever, for us on this committee, we represent the taxpayers. The taxpayers are putting money into our education system, and they expect to get a product out of it. That product at the end of the 12th grade should be a productive, good citizen graduate. There are intermediate levels below that we've got to measure. We've mentioned 3rd grade. Now we're talking math. I think the critical point in math is usually 7th or 8th grade, right? Somewhere in that range. So the student performance we're talking about, the numbers we were given, I'm going to be really honest with you, they're abysmal, totally unacceptable in terms of us getting value, return on investment for our taxpayer investors. So from that standpoint, student performance, what's your solution to getting the student performance out there and in front of people and making that one of the prime key measures?
My response to that is we need stronger accountability measures. We need to hold schools more accountable for the outcomes that they're producing and be able to transparently report this information. So from my perspective, it's definitely about accountability.
And Chairman, Madam Chair, if I could, I do want to draw kind of a parallel, even though, as Dr. Hovanec called out in her presentation, we're not talking about completely duplicating exactly what you're seeing states do with early literacy, but there are for sure, some parallels here with the strategies that we try to deploy to improve early literacy rates. So on the accountability piece, you did see up there universal screeners for math. That's part of displaying the data and part of being able to unpack at maybe the regional level what performance actually is. I'll call out, Tennessee has taken a really bold step forward, not only you all during the 2021 legislative session by funding the summer learning camps, for those first several years, but now the governor's office has, proposed perpetually funding those. If you look at the learning loss in Student Acceleration Act, it mentions those camps and what the time has to constitute. And it's not just literacy, it's also about math. So there is a framework you can see where a state could start to have, already has the targeted intervention opportunities in place. It's just a matter of having the really clear, transparent accountability piece there with the data to start differentiating the interventions. To your point, Chairman Reagan, I mean, math is similar to literacy in the sense that the support that a certain school or district might need could look different. If they have 95% of their students aren't reading on grade level in math, the support that school needs or the number of kids they have to support is going to look different than a district that has 55 or 60%. And just want to point out, Tennessee does have some of that framework in place to begin differentiating interventions for kids in math as well.
Yes, Chairman.
In the interest of time, I'll just shorten this last one up. I mentioned to the Department of Education the idea that teacher source, or EPPs, education preparation providers, and tied the first 3 years, let's say, of that new teacher's performance in the classroom to those students, their performance. We have a situation now where teachers come out, the colleges of education brag about Praxis scores. And I don't have anything against Praxis, but I haven't seen any statistical ties between Praxis and student performance. And so my concern is the feedback that we have to the EPPs, the teachers, colleges, or sources, and it's not that I can see, and I've been looking, I haven't found any direct tie that they use in student performance. So how would you solve that problem, especially in math?
So how Florida solves this problem is we evaluate educators based on student outcomes. And their contracts are linked to it, and their bonuses and step increases are linked to it. So effective teachers can get a renewed one-year contract. Ineffective teachers can't. And we have a strong accountability system rating our schools A through F, and highly effective teachers have to be in DNF schools and are given incentives to be there.
But how do we
too.
tie that back to the EPPs, the education preparation providers?
Oh, so on the evaluation system, the State Department of Education publishes which prep programs outcomes for how effective the educators were that came out of each of those. And so students, when making decisions about where to go, can select which prep program they want to go to based on how effective previous graduates were once they get into the classroom. And it's a transparency and reporting issue too, and it has influenced some funding decisions on teacher prep programs.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll truncate my questions in the interest of sharing time.
Thank you so much. We're back to Chairman Sapicki.
Is it okay if I kind of go back and forth, Madam Chairman?
That is fine, and we've got a little less than 10 minutes, if you'll
ex-
keep that in mind.
I'll
Thank
be
you.
extremely quick here.
Thank you.
One of the things that I've looked at is I've looked at the math standards. And I pulled out, I went back to St. Louis where I was raised, and I asked my mother, because she kept them for my math books that she had in K through 8. And I looked at the fundamentals that were being taught to me back when I was going to elementary school, and probably like my colleague from East Tennessee, we shared probably some of the same kind of textbooks that we were going to be learning from, and it was basically the fundamentals and basics in K through 8. And you fast forward to what we have today, and you're seeing the algebraic principles being pushed down into 5th grade before we have mastery of the basics. Even though I may have not have taken algebra till my freshman year of high school, and geometry my sophomore year, and algebra 2 my junior year, then an elective my senior year, I still had the basics and foundational principles of arithmetic down, that I could succeed in life whether I went to college or not. It seems like from what you just did to me right there with that little triangle, that's something that you would have to make sure it's grade level appropriate. Making sure that you're not giving that question to a 3rd grader. That might be something more appropriate for a 7th and 8th grader to be able to think that conceptually. One of the things we have to solve in Tennessee, I believe, is making sure that our grade level appropriateness of our standards matches up to the cognitive ability of our students. That's one. Number 2, with all the things that you've recommended, that NAEP has seen, right, and the recommendations they made in mathematics, are there states out there right now that have adopted those? And what are their results?
You're recognized.
Representative Stupicki, there are new initiatives in mathematics that states have adopted. Most notably, Alabama last year did a comprehensive math reform through their, what was it, House Bill 170 or Senate Bill 171. And that's probably the biggest reform that we've seen so far. However, even talking to the Alabama policymakers, they basically just went in and inserted math wherever there was reading. So they literally just copied their reading law and put in math terms instead. This year, there is a lot more flurry around math policy. North Carolina has an in-depth math bill that requires high-quality instructional materials, interventions, and a bunch of other things. Florida has math materials scholarships for students who score low on the state assessment to be able to purchase supplemental materials at home to be able to use with parents and caregivers and for tutoring services. Arkansas has a bill with math intervention plans, reporting, just a lot of stuff thrown into it. New Mexico is looking at some things. Nevada has filed a bill looking at math specialists. So there's a lot of flurry around math, but there isn't a comprehensive math policy state that has demonstrated outcomes yet because we haven't implemented for a long enough time. I will say my home state of Minnesota has always been a top performer in math and continues to hold one of the top places, but they have lowered expectations to students. I would challenge not to lower standards to students' cognitive expectations, but raise expectations of students to meet state standards. And I know it's a challenging flip, but an important consequence. But Minnesota's math performance has been on a steady decline over the last 10 years. They are not doing what they need to in order to keep up. They are not holding schools and districts accountable for making sure those outcomes are there, and their achievement gaps are widening. And so I think it's really important that regardless of what state policies are put into place, that piece of accountability for student outcomes isn't continued to be lowered to meet students where they are.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Looks like last on our list, Chairman White.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Now, I just want to thank both of our presentations today. Is very, very good. And I really appreciate what you're saying about accountability. And for this committee and the other committee, I think we need to keep that in mind. When we passed the third grade retention in 2021, I think it was one of the best things we did. And even though it's taken up thousands of hours of our time and millions of emails we've gotten over the last year, and it's caused a lot of angst across our state, it has really pulled attention around our state is, guys, we got to get this right. And we just can't keep overlooking it and say, oh, it's too hard, let the local do this, the local do that. We understand all the things, but this accountability going forward, whether it be in math now, going up, continuing on reading, and I think it's opened our eyes too, and it really has on mind, is that I keep saying, why are we talking about holding back an eight-year-old in reading? We need to be talking about our 5, 6, and 7-year-old and how we're getting to that point. And so accountability all the way. So that's what we want to look at this summer. Chairman Stupicki, thank you for your comments. Originally, that was very, very good. That we really need to look at how a child gets to third grade needing so much remediation. So, and Ms. Carney, we're going to be working with y'all this summer talking about that a lot, okay? Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lady.
Well, thank you. And members, we're about at our time to be out of the room. And so that was good timing on the presenters. Thank you both, everyone, for being here and how you prepared for us. We appreciate your time and knowledge, and we look forward to continuing the work. And so this is our last meeting, unless we need to come back in. But I just do want to say thank you from our, it takes many, many people to keep this going, the committee running, and I'm just so grateful to everyone from our clerks, Elizabeth in the back there. We've got Krista, who's our legal, and Colleen is our research analyst, and my vice chair. But each member, I appreciate so much your faithfulness and attendance and paying attention and the questions and everything. It's just made it a blessing for me to steer this ship as best I can, and it's been an honor and a blessing. So with that, we will, does anyone want to be recognized for anything? All right.
Motion to adjourn.
We'll go back. We stand adjourned, subject to the call of the chair. So thank you all.